welcome back to track 3, the processes track. And welcome everyone who just got up, because we have different time zones here. So some people might join us for their breakfast. So welcome to you, and welcome to everyone who's new to this track. And welcome back everyone who has joined us in the last couple of hours. So I would like to remind everybody that we have a code of conduct. You can find it on Umbrella. Please let us know if you see anything that is against our code of conduct so that we can do something about it. Also, thank you very much to all of our sponsors. You can find them in their booths. So we have digital booths. So go and hang out with our sponsors. Not now, after the talk. Also, make sure to network with other people. You can find them in the People tab on the left in Umbrella. And everyone make sure if you have questions, put them in the Q&A tab on Umbrella as well so that we can ask them after the talks. And we have a hashtag. It's hashtag WTF is Cloud Native. So tweet about us and share your favorite quotes of the conference. And yeah, so for our next speaker, who is wearing double glasses, for coolness and sight reasons, I would very much like to welcome Jim Walker. He's going to give a world premiere today and talking about the distributed mindset. This is your brain on Cloud Native. Jim is a recovering developer and he joined into product marketer at Cockroach Labs. So we are all very excited for you to kick it off. So go ahead, Jim, and talk to us about the distributed mind.
Thank you, Ava. I'm happy you're excited because I'm a little nervous, actually. Like I said, this is, like you said, this is a world premiere. This is some material that's been kind of rambling around in my head for the past couple of months, really since I met my partner in crime here, Michelle, who's on with us, and Michelle's she's going to come in at the end with QA as well. Michelle has better glasses than I do today, and just his overall, like, it's a better background, everything going on, Michelle. But so stick with me. Like I said, this is kind of a newer talk, but I think apropos for really what we're doing within this conference, and especially within this track. I think, what's happened over the past couple of years, at least, I've seen a lot of change happen in the industry. The past 3 years more than the past 15 before that. I guess I just aged myself a little bit, but I'm more excited about being in tech and doing all this stuff more than ever, honestly. But quick housekeeping. Thank you. I thank you to the sponsors for inviting me to talk, number one, and making me actually pull this presentation together, because I actually had to think through a whole bunch of really cool stuff. But thank you to the audience for attending as well. So please do engage. I love questions along the way. And I would hope there's some good questions at the end as well. It's be great. I'm Jim. As noted, I am actually no longer VP of product marketing. I'm just principal product evangelist, which means I just go out and talk. I guess that's what I do now for a living. And I'm originally a developer, and I stopped being, you never really stop being a developer. I'm still code. But I turned into marketer because salespeople drove me absolutely out of my head. Every time they spoke, they would add 4 months of scope to a project. So I figured if I can't beat them, I'd join them. And so, I've spent my career really in emerging tech, trying to kind of explain it in simple terms for people to understand. And that's what I love to do, y'all. So I hope what I do here is a little bit of that as well. And I think that's kind of the talk track that Michelle and I devised here, going through here. And I'm just on Twitter, I'm James, J-A-Y. That's the Chicago pronunciation of the name James. Oh, and by the way, happy to everybody in the world. And I'm going to do this is the worst. I know it is, but it's somewhere, somebody on this talk, hopefully they're already at my birthday, because it's the 5th of November somewhere on the planet. So happy birthday to me. That's all that's my one thing. Okay, good. All right. So the genesis of this talk, honestly, as I kind of noted, I've seen a shift in a complete paradigm shift, actually. And I saw it firsthand. I saw it it was about 3.5, maybe 4 years ago. I was working at a company called CoreOS, and when I joined CoreOS, I was surrounded by some incredibly intelligent people. And if you've been in the cloud native community, you probably know some of the people that were at CoreOS. There's a really wonderful group of people that work there. They've landed in lots of different places, but they really kind of pioneered a lot of this, a lot of this thinking. I think a lot of this was going on, but there's a really wonderful collection of people at that company at that time. And when I joined CoreOS, I always took pride in understanding architectures and technology and kind of how things work. And I got to tell you, when I was first exposed to Kubernetes and this distributed systems thinking and cloud native, I struggled with it. I really did. It took me kind of like, I remember it was like 2 to 3 months before I really kind of started to grok, what etcd meant and what multi-master meant and all these things. And like, it was difficult for me, honestly. And once I did get it, I started to honestly apply it to everything I knew in my past. And that had everything to do with data. And that's really how I landed here at Cockroach Labs. Now, in my time here at Cockroach Labs, I'm again surrounded by some incredibly great people and some wonderful minds. One of which is Michelle Ginow, who's on the phone with me, not on the phone, but on this platform with me today. And so this entire concept and this talk track is something that Michelle and I have been toying with for, well, gosh, Michelle, months, right? And so actually, I've known you for just under a year, I guess. Maybe, oh my God, I think only a half a year. Unbelievable. And this is just something that the two of us feel very strongly about, and we do feel like there's a shift. And the format of this talk is kind of left brain, right brain. And so my slides here are formatting like that, right? So we're going to go through a couple of different concepts in terms of just things that we deal with in our day-to-day lives in a kind of left brain, right brain point of view. And how does the distributed mindset kind of perform some sort of different lens on these two sides of what is really one connected system? And so, Michelle, thank you. Thank you for being my partner in building this. And I think, I hope I do justice, but in the end, we can all come together and you can make sure that we cover the points that I obviously flake along the way. I try my hardest, right? So, okay, y'all. So so WTF is the conference. So WTF, Jim, what is the distributed mindset? Now, to me, the simplest way I think about the distributed mindset is, in my old world, I used to think about a logical model. I used to build an application. Maybe I did it maybe I used waterfall, or I used whatever my old paradigms were. In the new world, I believe we have to actually overlay the concept of the physical world within everything that we do, in all the different things that we do, either building, operating, delivering software. Because the speed of light is no joke, number one. We're never going to get, well, I don't think we're going to get past the speed of light, at least in my lifetime. I think as humans, we will eventually at some point. But, I think this is one of those things that the physical nature of what we do becomes very, very important. And be that, a meter away, a nanometer away, or, across the globe, location becomes very, very important in terms of how we think about our systems and what we're doing. And I think, the distributed nature also breaks down any sort of linear functions and linear kind of thought, this iteration and kind of going through things in more of a random or almost chaotic pattern, I think is something that we all have to kind of internalize and make part of what we do. Now, on the other side of this, well, I think the distributed nature of humans has accelerated incredibly over the past, I guess, year and a half. It's almost 2 years now with the pandemic that we've been in this kind of distributed nature. I've never met Michelle. Never met Michelle. Michelle, I don't even know where you live. I don't know how tall you are. I just know Michelle is like this awesome person that I talk to on the phone once a day, or 3 or 8 times a day. And she has this really cool dog named Hank. And I see everything that's in that little square. And the API that I have to actually communicate with Michelle is exactly that. I know what the conversations are going to be about. We talk about work, right? But we're very distributed. And what that's done is it's broken down some of the kind of normal conversations that we have with each other. And I think one of the things that we as humans are getting more and more used to is that concept, not knowing, exactly what's in the box, like in that kind of little box on the screen that I am talking to Michelle in, but understanding who that person is and how to respond and work. Sounds like an API, doesn't it, y'all? Well, I mean, that's kind of one of those core concepts. And I think we as humans are actually functioning more like a distributed system than ever before. And I think we've been forced to do that. And if there's one, I mean, gosh, the pandemic has been horrible. Trust me. Like, it's just, for many, many people, there's a couple of things I think that are going to irrevocably change humankind because of kind of what we've done. Now, for me, if we expand deeper into some of these concepts around, what this distributed mindset is, think about the way that we work. Think about the way that we code. When I first started coding, I would go into a room, I'd build something, somebody gave me a spec, a PRD, and I would go off and build whatever that thing was, and I would come back and building that. I remember I had teams of 3 or 4 people. We were building the product management system for Telia Mobitel, which is the cellular provider up in Sweden. And that thing was okay, it was a super complex design of products and service plans and all these different things. We designed it and then we coded it, but it was basically 5 of us in a room doing it. That was it. We were in a basement room, there was no windows, and we coded. And the interactions really were just between us. Today, it just doesn't work like that. It isn't even remotely close to that. First of all, there would have been frameworks of things that people have already built in open source that we were building on top of. We've been interacting with tons of people in a community or at a conference around X, Y, and Z. There was different, groups working on each of the various different components. The entire concept of being object-oriented is something that, God lucky me, I mean, from the very day one of the way that I coded, I was coding in a language called Smalltalk, y'all, which is, by the way, the best language ever created. I was exposed to Kent Beck at a very early, in the mid 90s, right? And talking about extreme programming, that was really the genesis of this distributed way of which we work, but we share everything. And open source is such a key piece of everything that we do. Again, I've been lucky to be part of open source communities for really, really quite some time. Now, the picture I use on my left side of the brain is probably one of the best and noble and awesome open source people I've ever been lucky enough to know in my lifetime. And this man by the name of Dan Cohen. If you don't know who Dan is, I think everybody on the planet should know who Dan Cohen is. If you're in the cloud native universe and you don't know who Dan is yet, you should. Dan he led the CNCF and really created a community that, to me, celebrates all the things that I think are great on the other side and the way we work together. And, the way that, the interface between people when we are actually working together is totally different. The way we collaborate, in a way that's respectful. And I'm going to come back to that in a couple of different slides, but I use Dan here because he's like my best presentation of somebody who really kind of lived the open source way, right? But on the other side, in the way we work, well, all our tools have changed. I can't imagine my life without Google Docs. I can't imagine my life without comments and suggesting changes in a documentation and actually going back and forth and working on something together with Michelle. As we built out this presentation, we had one big document. We just kept throwing ideas in there. It was like it's like a whiteboard, but we're doing it online. That collaboration, I think, has gotten incredible. And it's not just, the new tools. I mean, look at what Microsoft did to Word, like making it kind of an online thing. Figma, Adobe, right? I mean, taking everything we've had in the past, and I don't think we're ever going to go back. I can't wait to be in an office and whiteboard an idea with Michelle. But I got to tell you, doing the whiteboarding and having this and being offline and online and being truly distributed, I think is going to be a really interesting time. I'll do return back into kind of the physical place where we are, actually together. So then what about delivery? The delivery of software has, again, okay, my cloud native talk would not be right if I didn't have a picture of a container somewhere, right? But really, literally, I think with the advent of Docker, everything changed. Everything changed. I mean, we had been doing containerization for quite time before that, but literally, there's not a developer on the planet that doesn't have that little, whale up in their upper right of their Mac, and they're coding against something, right? And everybody kind of knows what Docker does. Now, to me, that is what's really forced a whole lot of change over the past 3 to 4 years. This is what's transformed the whole, software delivery supply chain. The same way that in the physical world, we have the concept of the container and what that's done for the supply chain, the global supply chain, which I know it's a little bit of a tricky topic right now, right? Like, but it's true, right? Like one little ripple in that supply chain has messed up a whole lot of stuff. The same thing happens in our software delivery supply chain, right? The way we take a container off of a ship and put it onto a truck, and there's a standard expectation of what that container is going to look like. Geez, I remember when I used to have to buy, I think the last bit of software I bought that ran on a PC for me was like Civilization 4. And I remember I bought the wrong version. I bought the Mac version of it. I didn't buy the PC version of that thing. This is not even a thing anymore for us, right? And this whole kind of this ability to be nimble and to drive and to change the way that we can automate movement of containers from, the fingers of the developer to the mouse clicks of the user, tremendous. And I think it permeates everything that we do. We simplify these things, and it's really about, on the other side, on the right-hand side, it's about setting expectations as humans. It's about, understanding what that API is. It's understanding that a container is X size, and maybe there's a little bit of a leeway where it can change the size of that thing, but we've actually done that as humans on the right side of the brain as well. And so I think the world in that way is becoming much more distributed as well. Now, if I think about, think, this comes back to, when you start to overlay the physical nature of the world into the logical, what does that mean for you? What is the effect of the speed of light in the systems and the applications and the code that we actually go out and do? Now, I'm at Cockroach Labs, so I am exposed to this every single day, very, very firsthand, in that, when you're committing a transaction in New York and somebody else is trying to commit a transaction against the same database at the same time in Sydney, who wins, right? And like, how do you actually think about that, the physical location and when things are happening and how they're happening and what that's going to actually impact on your system? Those are challenges we just haven't had to deal with because, well, it was kind of single server. Or we weren't dealing with these broad, geographies. And I think going forward, this is just the nature of who we are. We're a global economy. We are global. We need to, on the right-hand side, right? Like, we need to think globally and act locally, and never more than today, because the world has completely shrank. 100%. We aren't even in the same world that we were in 5 years ago. And it's just the advent and access to information has completely changed the way we do. So the way that we interact actually has to think about global now. Whoever knew when some weird little event happened in some small town in Nebraska, who knew about that in China? Nobody. I tell you what, they do now because they see it on CNN, y'all. And so, what are the impacts of the things we do in the various different parts of our system because we have access to it across the entire planet, or because of the physical location of where these things are, right? And I think, again, left brain, right brain, we're doing this in our personal lives. We're doing it in our code as well. And I think ultimately it comes down to the way we communicate. And this is all about, respect. And I think about APIs and coding the APIs as respect. I'm going to deliver what you ask of me. That's what I'm going to do as a service. You ask me and give me input. I'm going to give that back how you expect to get it. And that's great. And we have a preconceived agreement on what that is. We need to do that as humans as well. And I think if we all just act respectfully and we actually are humans in this distributed world, we'll actually get along. So a lot of the same core concepts we leave in tech actually apply in our normal lives. And I think, honestly, I'm proud to be part of this community because we do this a whole lot. And I think that's why, when you look at the CNCF and what they've done around like respect and the code of conduct in which we started this entire conversation with, this is exactly what we're talking. What is a code of conduct but an expected API? And I think that's actually really, really important. I'm proud to be part of that. And then ultimately, I think this becomes really important because we have made strides against, how quickly we can deliver software, right? We have made strides in terms of developer productivity. We are reducing operational costs because we can move containers around a lot easier, and we don't have to, worry about scale and resilience like Kubernetes is doing some of the things, right? We can kind of, create better customer experiences no matter where people are on the planet. think these are kind of like 4 goals that we've had in development for a very long time, and we didn't make a whole lot of progress against them until recently. And I think with the advent of cloud native, the advent of kind of ubiquitous compute everywhere, the advent of actually incorporating scale and resilience into our applications themselves, the advent of API and respectful communication, it's allowing us to actually do things a lot faster. Because you know what? I don't have to code things anymore. I just code against an API. And that's awesome. It's the constituent parts. And what does that mean in the future? And man, I'm a believer in serverless ultimately, y'all, because I think that gets really, really cool. But I think, ultimately on the other side of this, it's on us. We live on an ever increasing, shrinking globe. It's no longer, I can live in Colorado and, that's my world, and I worry about my local economy and my local politics. I think we're all kind of, subjected to global political, economic, and honestly, the climate and everything that's going on there. And I think as a citizen of the world, it's incredibly important that we actually all are distributed and actually understand our place within that distributed system, because it's basically one big system, which comes back to my final point. And thank you, Michelle, for finding this, because I absolutely love this. This guy by the name of Melvin Conway. Conway's law was any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. Oh my God, does that apply to our code? Does that apply to us as humans? And I can't think of a better quote that actually ties these two sides of the brain together than this. So, thank you, Melvin. You all can look him up. There's a little quick QR code if you want to learn more about Melvin Conway. So that is my talk. I did it, and I think it was like 20 minutes. Is exactly as we kind of targeted, Ava, right? I think I was right on time.
Perfect.
And so I hope it was useful. I hope it was good. I hope it was at least entertaining. It is new, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim, for giving that wonderful talk. And thank you for the world premiere here. And amazing, super cool. I would also like to welcome Michelle. She has been listening in the whole time, and she's been here on the call with us. And yeah, I read, unfortunately, that we again have technical issues with the video, but from what I gathered, you can hear us. So at least that should be working. So that's good. People, please write your questions into the Q&A tab. And while you do that, I have a question, because open source is a huge topic. So how do you define open source within your work and within your field? What exactly is open source to you?
Yeah, I often get into these debates about open source, and I think people will gravitate to the license, the open source license, always, to say if something is open source or not. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of those people. I think that's definitely one part of it. Absolutely. And I think, the genesis of all of this came from the way that we think about how we share software, which is definitely part of this conversation. But, I always think about there's 3 C's that I think that are really important to open source. Number 1 is code, because that's what this is about, right? So is the code available? Can I inspect it? I often think about Cockroach Labs. I'll say this, I think it's a PhD in distributed systems. Go check out some of the code. If you want to learn an implementation of Raft, awesome, right? Like, it's completely there. And I think it's about community, number 2, which is, open source is it's not a single person. It's N plus lots, right? Like, and the larger the community, the more, vibrant and usually effective the open source project is. Sometimes it can be just simple as something, made by 2 people in a dorm room somewhere. Mm-hmm. I know, like, GIMP is one of the most kind of popular open source tools in the history of the planet, right? Like, thing's still going. That was, actually the 2 founders of Cockroach Labs did that while they were in college at Berkeley. Like, wow. Awesome. Yeah. So I know them personally, and I'm like, you guys, but I mean, what's the community around? It's still open source, right? And I think the last part about it is about consumption. It's code, it's community, it's consumption. Consumption used to be one of these things where open source was cool because I could just download the software and start using it, and it was really great. And like, it was kind of one of those things. I think that's changed over the past couple of years because I think people just want to consume things as a service. People are okay paying for it because, well, it's kind of easy to get up and running and all these things. And I think we're going to have I think we're going to whip back into free software again, free services. Mm-hmm. I really do, because I think it's such a critical part of open source. You know, the not just the freedom of like, hey, I can get it, but like the free to use thing. And I think, you know, and I think, of course, absolutely, the fourth pillar there. It doesn't have a C. I'm sorry, I would love 4 C's, but you know, 3 C's and the license. I think the license is actually a big piece of this whole thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Michelle, do you have anything to add to the talk? Anything you would like us to highlight?
Well, actually, I want to pull 2 things together from what Jim was just talking about, and then further back in his talk, one of his final points was about communication, how with a distributed mindset, we can't just be arm's reach from each other anymore and like shout across the office divider. We have to actually be proactive and clear about communication. And that really reflects how our systems work now as well. So we are in a Conway kind of way, we were forced specifically by the pandemic especially to have to start really thinking about how do we communicate, and respect as part of it. How do I communicate what you need to hear in a way that you can hear it and that is efficient, but also, you know, since we're humans, it has to actually still be human. Mm-hmm. So that's what the distributed mindset is about. You know, the cloud is an inherently distributed system. So I always get the left and the right brain mixed up.
I don't know either, Michelle. I just made it up.
So half of the brain, I think it's the right brain, right? Half of the brain, we need to be thinking more like the machines we're trying to communicate well with. And then the other half of the brain is how do we actually build the things we want to build to work that way? So, you know, the mindset is that it's an architectural decision. Ultimately, it's not a tools decision. There's great tools out there. And most of the talk in cloud native, I think we're finally getting out of the woods with that. But until recently, it's all been how. It's not been, you know, how to actually set up infra, how to, like, what's your stack? How are we going to do this? Like, we were making the path by walking, but we're at the point now where we're gaining enough proficiency that we can start to understand how, as an organization, do we fit ourselves to what we've created to, you know, be able to deliver applications and services. So what's really interesting to me is the other thing I wanted to bring in from what Jim was just talking about is serverless, because I think that is the ultimate expression of cloud native, if you think about it, or it will be, because it's one of these things that's been coming and coming for a while, but isn't quite here yet. Because until very recently, if you're a company and you wanted competitive advantage, you optimized your value chain. But now you have to be able to widen and deepen your connections. If you think about it, again, it's an architectural decision, because we see it happening in real time now as architects and developers are making choices, taking actions to make a serverless model the core abstraction. And when this happens, code starts to become a liability, because if you can use a serverless app and just hook it in where you need it, when you need it, that literally changes how we work, and it has to change how we think about how we work. So like, for example, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead. No, please.
No, I was just saying, like, it shifts all our assumptions about testing. I mean, in serverless apps, 90% of their overall functionality are integrations, it's connections. So you're going to have to integration test the heck out of your apps, because that's how they work. But that's a complete kind of inversion of the pyramid, the testing pyramid. That used to be like not something you did, but wasn't the major piece of it. And now it is the piece that makes it all work, or I think so anyway. But again, this is all still emerging.
Michelle, it's all in that connective tissue. Right.
Yeah.
That's the critical thing. So
yeah. Well, I thank both of you so much for your inputs, and also thank you, Michelle, for coming on for the talking part at the end. It was great to have you both. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdoms and for chatting to us. And so I can still see our videos twitching. So unfortunately, we still have a teeny bit of a tech issue, but we're going to resolve this. Hopefully, wish us luck. We will be back in 10 minutes for the next talk. So see you all there. And until then, have a nice break.
Thank you.
Make yourself a cup of coffee. And Chima and Michelle, thank you so much for being here. And bye.